She let it slip over coffee. Just like that. One careless sentence, and the last 38 years of my life shattered like a dropped plate, sharp, sudden, irreparable. The kitchen smelled of burnt toast and cheap instant coffee, the same brand they'd been drinking for decades. Morning light filtered through the yellowed curtains, casting long shadows across the linoleum floor. He sat there, 61 years of calloused hands and bad knees, staring at the woman he'd shared a bed with since Reagan was president. Her lips moved, words tumbling out, and for a moment, the world stopped making sense. Your father, it started the day we got married. His fingers tightened around the chipped ceramic mug. The heat should have burned, but he didn't feel it. All he felt was the slow, sickening drop in his gut, like stepping off a ledge in the dark. She hadn't even meant to say it. That was the worst part. Just a passing remark, something about old wedding photos, how his father had been so handsome in his suit. Then, God, the way he touched me that night, right there in front of everyone. A beat of silence. Her eyes widened. His breath stopped. No, I didn't mean. But the damage was done. The words were out, slithering between them like something alive. He watched her face twist, panic flashing in her eyes, and for the first time in nearly 4 decades, he saw a stranger sitting across from him. The denial came fast, desperate. You misunderstood, I was just, but her voice cracked, and that's when he knew. Look at me, he said, low and rough. And say it again. She couldn't. Her hands shook, rattling the spoon against the saucer. The clock on the wall ticked too loud, each second stretching longer than the last. Then, like a dam breaking, she slumped forward, her shoulders caving in. Fine. Yes. It happened. The confession unfolded in jagged pieces, each one cutting deeper than the last. Their wedding reception. His father's hands sliding up the back of her dress while guests laughed and clinked glasses. I told him to stop, she whispered, but 6 months later, it happened again. And again. A year and a half of stolen moments, hushed phone calls, lies stacked so high he never saw the truth. Then his mother died. He was grieving, she said, as if that excused it. As if that made it okay to crawl back into his father's bed while he buried his own mother. And the baby. The one we lost, it wasn't yours. The air left his lungs in one sharp punch. He remembered that night, the hospital, the blood, the way she'd sobbed into his chest. He'd held her for hours, whispering promises, never knowing the child she mourned wasn't even his. The affair had sputtered on for years, she admitted. His father would lose interest, then come crawling back. She'd resist, then give in. Over and over, until the old bastard finally dropped dead in 2018. I thought it was over then, she said, but then came the final blow, a one-night stand with some guy from a bar, just 2 months into their marriage. I was young, I was stupid. You were my wife, he snarled, standing so fast the chair screeched against the floor. The house was too small suddenly, the walls pressing in. Family photos lined the hallway, graduations, birthdays, grandkids grinning in Christmas pajamas. How many of those smiles were built on lies? How much of his life had been a carefully constructed fraud? He grabbed his keys from the hook by the door, hands trembling. I need to go. Where? Her voice was small, broken. He didn't answer. Couldn't. The front door slammed behind him, the sound final, like a coffin lid closing. Outside, the world kept spinning like nothing had changed. Kids laughed down the street. A lawnmower hummed in the distance. Normalcy, everywhere but inside his chest, where everything had just been ripped out by the roots. He got in the car. Turned the key. And for the first time in 38 years, he had no idea where he was driving. The car engine growled beneath him, a steady vibration that matched the tremor in his hands. He drove without direction, just away, past the post office where he'd mailed Christmas cards every December, past the diner where they'd shared milkshakes as teenagers, past all the landmarks of a life that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Again. And again. He didn't have to look to know it was her. The screen lit up with missed calls, each one a tiny pulse of guilt. He tossed the damn thing onto the passenger seat like it was burning him. 38 years. The number played on a loop in his skull. 38 years of birthdays, of mortgage payments, of holding her hair back when she was sick. 38 years of thinking he knew the woman sleeping beside him. A horn blared. He jerked the wheel, barely missing a pickup truck. The driver flipped him off, shouting something through the glass. He didn't react. His knuckles were bone white on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. He needed air. The car skidded to a stop at the edge of Miller's Pond, the same spot he'd taught his boys to fish. The water was still, glassy under the afternoon sun. Perfect for skipping stones. He used to bring the grandkids here. Now the thought made him sick. His feet carried him to the shore before he realized he'd even gotten out of the car. Pebbles crunched under his work boots. The wind smelled like wet earth and old memories. She was 19, he muttered to no one. 19 fucking years old when it started. His father had been in his 40s. Bigger. Louder. The kind of man who filled a room just by walking into it. Had she ever really had a choice? The question slithered into his thoughts, unwelcome. He crushed it fast. No. No excuses. She'd lied. 4 decades. Lied every time she kissed him, every time she laughed at his jokes, every time she whispered I love you in the dark. A rock sailed past his vision, hitting the water with a sharp plunk. He turned. His oldest grandson, Jake, 16, all lanky limbs and messy brown hair, stood a few feet away, another stone pinched between his fingers. Grandpa? The kid's smile faltered. You okay? And just like that, the weight of it all crashed down. How much did the kids know? Had they ever suspected? Did his sons carry his father's blood without realizing it? The thoughts came fast, ugly, choking. Yeah, he managed, voice rough. Just needed some air. Jake nodded, but his eyes stayed wary. Smart kid. Too smart. Mom's looking for you. She called me like 10 times. Of course she had. The family grapevine worked fast. Another rock skipped across the pond. 1. 2. 3 jumps before it sank. You want to talk about it? Jake asked, casual, like he was asking about the weather. He almost laughed. Where would he even start? Hey, kid, turns out your great-grandpa was a piece of shit and your grandma's been lying to me since before your mom was born. Nah, he said instead. Just grown-up stuff. Jake shrugged, but the look he gave was older than his years. You know we've got your back, right? No matter what. The words hit harder than they should have. He cleared his throat, suddenly grateful for the sunglasses hiding his eyes. Yeah. I know. They stood there in silence for a while, skipping stones, the water swallowing each one without a trace. The sun dipped low over the pond, painting the water in streaks of orange and red. Jake had left an hour ago with promises to keep quiet, but the silence between them had been heavy with unspoken things. Now, alone again, he stared at his reflection in the darkening water, a face lined with years he wasn't sure he recognized anymore. His phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't her. Dad? Where the hell are you? His daughter's voice crackled through the speaker, sharp with worry. Mom's freaking out. She says you just left. He closed his eyes. Sarah, his youngest girl. The one who'd inherited his stubborn chin and her mother's laugh. Did she know? Did any of them? I'm fine, he lied. Just needed to think. Bullshit. The word came out like a gunshot. Something's wrong. Mom won't stop crying. Now tell me where you are before I call the cops. A dry chuckle escaped him. 38 years married, and his wife chose today to start crying over him. Miller's Pond, he muttered. Stay there. The line went dead. He tossed the phone onto the grass. The trees whispered in the evening breeze, leaves rustling like old secrets. He thought about his father, really thought about him, for the first time in years. The way the man would clap him on the shoulder too hard at family barbecues. The way his eyes always lingered a second too long when Carol walked by in her summer dresses. Had everyone known but him? Tires crunched on gravel. Sarah's beat-up Honda skidded to a stop, door flying open before the engine even died. Jesus Christ, Dad. She stormed toward him, Doc Martens kicking up dust. You look like shit. He almost smiled. That was Sarah, no sugarcoating, never had been. She plopped down beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. For a long minute, they just sat there, watching the water swallow the last of the sunlight. Mom says you're leaving, she finally said. His chest tightened. She tell you why? No. Sarah picked at a loose thread on her jeans. But whatever it is, it's bad, isn't it? The words clawed at his throat, desperate to spill out. His little girl. His Sarah. How could he tell her the grandfather she'd loved was a monster? That her own mother. Dad. She turned to face him, eyes glistening in the twilight. Talk to me. And God help him, he almost did. But then headlights cut through the gathering dark. A familiar minivan rolled into the lot. Carol. Sarah stiffened beside him. Shit. I told her not to. The van door slammed. Footsteps hurried toward them. He stood abruptly, dusting off his jeans like he could brush away the last hour. Like he could pretend this was just another evening, just another family moment. Carol stopped a few feet away, her face pale in the fading light. She looked small suddenly, not the bold woman who'd raised 5 kids, but someone fragile. Breakable. We need to talk, she whispered. Sarah looked between them, confusion giving way to dawning horror. What the hell is going on? The pond lapped at the shore, steady as a heartbeat. Somewhere in the trees, a nightbird called. And he realized, with a clarity that cut like glass, that nothing would ever be the same again. Everything, he said quietly. Everything's going on. Carol reached for him. He didn't pull away. But he didn't take her hand either. The drive home was silent. Carol sat stiffly in the passenger seat, her fingers twisting the wedding band she hadn't yet taken off. Sarah followed behind in her Honda, headlights cutting through the dark like a search party trailing a fugitive. Every stoplight felt like an interrogation. The kids, Carol started at the third red light. Don't. His grip on the wheel tightened. Not yet. She flinched like he'd struck her. The light turned green. Their house loomed in the darkness when they pulled up, its windows glowing yellow against the night. The porch swing where they'd spent summer evenings, the flower beds he'd planted for their 25th anniversary, all of it looked like a stage set now. A carefully constructed lie. Sarah parked behind them but didn't get out. Smart girl. Giving them space. The front door creaked the way it always had. The smell of lavender air freshener and yesterday's meatloaf wrapped around them like a shroud. I want you to leave, he said, still facing the door. Carol's breath hitched. Where would I go? Not my problem anymore. The words hung between them, cruel and final. He expected tears. Begging. Instead, Carol's voice went frighteningly calm. You're right. She walked past him toward the bedroom, her footsteps measured. He heard the closet door slide open, the rustle of hangers. Part of him wanted to storm in there, to scream, to demand how she could pack up their life so easily. The other part, the broken part, just stood there, listening to the sound of his marriage being boxed up. Sarah appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed tight over her chest. "Dad." "Not now, sweetheart. Fuck that." She stepped inside, slamming the door behind her. "Mom's throwing clothes in a suitcase and you're just, what? Playing statue?" The bedroom door opened. Carol emerged with a duffel bag, her eyes red but dry. "Sarah, honey. Somebody better start talking." Sarah's voice cracked. "Right fucking now." The clock in the hallway ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. Carol set down the bag. "I hurt your father," she said simply. "In ways I can't fix." "How?" Sarah looked between them. "What did you do?" The air grew thick, suffocating. He could see the moment Sarah understood, the way her face went slack, then twisted in disgust. "Oh my God." She took a step back. "Not. Grandpa?" Carol's silence was answer enough. Sarah made a choked sound, like someone had punched her in the gut. "I think I'm gonna be sick." She bolted for the bathroom. The retching sounds that followed made his stomach turn. Carol reached for her bag again, her movements mechanical. "I'll call when I'm settled somewhere." He didn't respond. Didn't move. Just watched as the woman he'd loved for nearly 4 decades walked out of their home, out of their life, leaving nothing but ghosts behind. The bathroom door opened. Sarah emerged, her face pale. "Dad." He pulled her into a hug, holding tight as she shook against him. Over her shoulder, through the still open front door, he watched Carol's taillights disappear down the street. And for the first time since that morning's coffee, he let himself cry. The house felt hollow without her. 3 days passed in a blur of unanswered phone calls and untouched meals. The kids took turns checking on him, Sarah bringing Tupperware containers of pasta she barely touched herself, his oldest son Mark showing up unannounced to mow the lawn in tense silence. They all knew now. The secret had spread through the family like a virus, leaving strained voices and averted eyes in its wake. On the 4th morning, the doorbell rang. He wasn't expecting the police. 2 officers stood on his porch, their hats in hand. The younger one shifted his weight from foot to foot while the senior officer, a gray-haired man with tired eyes, cleared his throat. "Mr. Henderson? We need to ask you some questions about your father's estate." Ice water flooded his veins. "Why?" The officers exchanged a glance. "Your wife came to the station yesterday," the older cop said carefully. "Filed a report about historical incidents involving your late father." The world tilted. He gripped the doorframe to steady himself. Carol had gone to the police? After all these years? What exactly did she say? His voice sounded foreign to his own ears. The younger officer pulled out a notepad. "She alleges your father sexually assaulted her beginning on your wedding day, with ongoing coercion spanning multiple decades." A pause. "She's provided journals, some dated correspondence." The hallway walls seemed to press closer. "Journals?" Carol had kept records? "There's more," the senior officer said gently. "She claims there may be other victims. Your sister's name came up." His knees nearly gave out. Linda. His baby sister, dead 10 years from breast cancer. Had she? "We'll need access to your father's old property," the cop continued. "Your wife thinks there might be evidence in the lake house basement." The lake house. Where they'd held family reunions. Where the grandkids had learned to swim. Nausea rose in his throat. He suddenly remembered his father's special fishing trips with Linda when she was 13. The way she'd come home quiet for days after. "Dad?" Sarah's voice cut through the fog. She stood at the top of the stairs, phone in hand, face pale. Aunt Linda's daughter just called me. She's freaking out. Says Grandma Carol told her something about Mom, about Aunt Linda, and now she's. The senior officer stepped forward. Sir, maybe you should sit down. But he was already moving, pushing past them into the yard, gulping in air like a drowning man. The morning sun glared down, exposing every wrinkle, every gray hair, every year of his life that had been built on lies. Carol hadn't just been cheating. She'd been surviving. And he'd sent her away. The lake house keys burned in his pocket as he drove north, the patrol car following close behind. Every mile marker felt like another turn of the knife. You sure you're up for this, Mr. Henderson? The detective's voice crackled through the phone on speaker. His fingers tightened on the wheel. Where's Carol? Safe. With a victim advocate. A pause. She asked about you. The highway blurred. He blinked hard. Sarah sat rigid in the passenger seat, chewing her thumbnail raw. Dad, if they find something, we'll deal with it. The words tasted like ash. The lake house appeared just past noon, its cheerful blue siding belying the horror beneath. His father's prized fishing rod still hung in the garage. The porch swing where Linda used to read creaked in the wind. Basement's this way, he muttered, leading them inside. The smell hit first, damp concrete and something sharper. Chemical. The detective's flashlight beam cut through the gloom, illuminating stacks of moldering boxes. Jesus, Sarah whispered. A padlocked door stood at the far end. His hands shook as he fumbled with the key. The lock gave with a metallic screech. Inside, the beam illuminated. A rusted filing cabinet. VHS tapes labeled in his father's neat handwriting. Polaroids pinned to a corkboard. Sarah made a strangled noise. That's Aunt Linda. The detective stepped forward, gloved hands carefully removing an envelope from the cabinet. Inside, letters. Dozens of them. All addressed to Carol. These look like confessions, the detective said quietly. He reached for one, the paper brittle under his fingers. His father's handwriting leaped off the page. You'll never tell. Because if you do, who will believe you over me? And what happens to those beautiful babies then? Sarah vomited in the corner. The detective radioed for backup. Somewhere outside, a loon called across the water, the same sound he'd heard on every childhood summer here. The sound of innocence. It took everything he had not to collapse right there on the cold concrete. Because suddenly, he understood. Carol hadn't stayed for love. She'd stayed to protect them all. The drive back was a nightmare. Sarah curled into herself in the passenger seat, arms wrapped tight around her middle like she was holding herself together. The detective's cruiser followed close behind, evidence bags piled in the back seat. His phone buzzed continuously, calls from his sons, from his sister's grown children, from relatives he hadn't spoken to in years. He let them all go to voicemail. The house was dark when they returned. He flicked on the kitchen light, illuminating the remnants of their shattered lives, Carol's favorite mug still in the sink, the grocery list she'd left on the fridge, the family calendar filled with birthdays and anniversaries that would never be celebrated the same way again. Sarah sank into a chair at the table. What do we do now? He had no answer. The detective's card sat heavy in his pocket. Call if you remember anything else, the man had said. As if there could be more. As if every revelation wasn't another landmine waiting to detonate beneath them. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, too early, too much, but fuck it, and slid one to Sarah. She knocked it back without flinching. They'll want statements, she said quietly. From all of us. His stomach churned. To stand in some cold courtroom and detail how thoroughly they'd been deceived. To watch Carol relive every awful moment in front of strangers. The back door creaked open. Mark stood there, still in his work boots, eyes red-rimmed. I went to see Mom. Sarah's glass hit the table with a clatter. And? Their oldest brother ran a hand through his hair. She's at some women's shelter downtown. Wouldn't let me in. A shaky breath. She handed me this through the door. A folded piece of notebook paper. His hands trembled as he opened it. I'm so sorry. For all of it. But mostly for letting you love a man who didn't deserve it. The words blurred. Mark cleared his throat. There's something else. The cops found videos. Sarah made a wounded noise. Not just of Mom. Of, Mark's voice broke. Aunt Linda. Some other women too. The whiskey turned to acid in his gut. Outside, a car pulled into the driveway. Doors slammed. Voices rose. Through the window, he saw his other sons, the twins, Michael and David, striding toward the house with their wives close behind. Their faces were thunderous. Sarah wiped her eyes. Well. Guess the whole family's here now. He straightened his shoulders, bracing for the storm. Because the truth was out. And the reckoning was just beginning. The kitchen erupted in chaos. Michael slammed his palms on the table hard enough to rattle the glasses. You're telling me we might be, he couldn't even finish the sentence. David paced like a caged animal, his wife clinging to his arm. Those DNA tests last Christmas. Mom made such a big deal about us all doing them. A horrible silence settled over the room. Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then went pale. It's the detective. They need cheek swabs from all of us. Mark's chair screeched as he stood abruptly. I need air. The back door slammed behind him. The rest of them sat frozen, staring at the half-empty whiskey bottle like it held answers. David's wife, Emily, always the practical one, spoke first. We should call a family therapist. Someone who specializes in this kind of trauma. Trauma? Michael let out a bitter laugh. That's what we're calling it. Our grandfather was a fucking predator and our mother was his victim. Sarah's shout startled everyone. Jesus Christ, Mike, she was 19 when it started. How old was Aunt Linda? 12? 13? The room went dead silent. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. All heads turned toward the sound. The house was supposed to be empty. Michael moved first, taking the stairs 2 at a time. The rest followed in a tense procession. The attic door stood slightly ajar. A sliver of light spilled onto the landing. Michael pushed it open. Carol stood amid the boxes of Christmas decorations and childhood memorabilia, an old photo album in her hands. She looked up slowly, her face gaunt in the yellow bulb's glow. I came for these, she whispered, holding up the album. Before they make the news. Before the kids see. David stepped forward. Mom, what the hell is? She opened the album to a marked page. A family reunion photo from 1985. His father's arm around a teenage Linda's shoulders. Carol standing stiffly beside them, her smile not reaching her eyes. And in the background, barely noticeable, a woman watching them from the porch shadows. Her name was Rebecca, Carol said quietly. The housekeeper before Maria. She disappeared when I was pregnant with Mark. The air left the room. Sarah made a small, broken sound. You don't think? Carol closed the album with trembling hands. I didn't let myself think. Not for 38 years. She looked at each of them in turn, her eyes brimming with something beyond grief. But I'm thinking now. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The sirens stopped outside their house. Carol didn't flinch. She just stood there, clutching the photo album to her chest like armor. The attic single bulb flickered, casting jagged shadows across her hollowed-out face. Footsteps pounded up the porch steps. A sharp knock rattled the front door. Police. Open up. Sarah grabbed his arm. Dad. But he was already moving, descending the stairs with a strange calm. The family trailed behind him in a daze, his shattered children, his broken wife, all drawn toward whatever fresh hell awaited. The detective from the lake house stood on their welcome mat, flanked by 2 uniforms. His expression was grim. We need you all to come to the station. A beat. We found remains. Carol made a sound like a wounded animal. Whose remains? Mark demanded. The detective's gaze flicked to Carol, then away. We believe it's a woman named Rebecca Seward. Employment records show she worked for your family in 1983. Michael swayed on his feet. Holy shit. You think he. We'll know more after dental records. The detective turned to Carol. Ma'am, your journals mentioned this woman. Said she knew too much. What did you mean by that? Carol's knees buckled. David caught her just in time. She saw him with Linda, Carol whispered. Threatened to go to the police. Then one day, she was just gone. Her haunted eyes met the detective's. He told me she ran off with a trucker. I wanted so badly to believe him. The detective nodded slowly. We're also looking into a 1981 missing persons case from his old teaching college. Woman named Angela, Carol finished tonelessly. Yes. There were others before me. Sarah burst into tears. The detective removed his hat. I'm sorry to do this, but we need formal statements from each of you. Especially about any unusual behavior you witnessed. Unusual behavior? Mark let out a hysterical laugh. He was Dad. Coach of the Year. Church elder. Everybody's favorite goddamn grandpa. A cold realization settled over the room. They weren't just victims. They'd been living monuments to a monster. Carol straightened suddenly, wiping her face. I'll go first. She stepped toward the waiting officers with a quiet dignity that shattered his heart all over again. Because suddenly, he understood. This wasn't just confession. It was her first act of freedom. The police station smelled like stale coffee and industrial cleaner. Carol sat ramrod straight in the interrogation room, her hands folded neatly on the steel table. Through the one-way glass, he watched as the detective slid a cup of water toward her. Start wherever you need to, the detective said gently. Carol's voice, when it came, was eerily calm. The first time he touched me was at my wedding reception. His hand on the small of my back, sliding lower when no one was looking. A pause. I laughed it off. Told myself it was just drunk old man behavior. Sarah gripped his arm so tight it hurt. 6 months later, he showed up at our apartment when my husband was working nights. Carol's fingers traced the rim of her cup. Said he'd come to fix the leaky faucet. I knew that was a lie, the super had already fixed it that morning. The detective nodded, letting the silence stretch. He had this way of crowding you. Not touching, just standing too close until your skin crawled. Carol's throat worked. That night, he backed me into the kitchen. Said if I screamed, who would they believe? The respected businessman or his hysterical daughter-in-law? Behind the glass, Mark made a choked sound and bolted from the room. Carol kept talking. Hour after agonizing hour, she peeled back the layers of their lives with surgical precision. The fishing trips with Linda. The way Rebecca the housekeeper had suddenly vanished after finding Linda's diary. The Polaroids she'd discovered in his desk drawer years later, images she'd burned in the backyard furnace, too terrified to confront him. I thought if I just played along, kept him happy, he'd leave the others alone, she whispered. But there were always others. The detective pushed a box of tissues across the table. Carol ignored it. After he died, I found the keys to the lake house basement. The lock was new, he'd had it installed the summer before his heart attack. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I couldn't make myself go down there. I just locked it back up and pretended I'd never seen it. A knock at the observation room door. A uniformed officer leaned in. Sir? The dental records confirmed it's Rebecca Seward. And we just got a hit on one of the VHS tapes. There's a girl on it who went missing from a neighboring town in 1992. The detective closed his eyes briefly. Christ. Carol didn't react. Just sat there, empty-eyed, finally free of secrets. He pressed his forehead to the cool glass, his breath fogging the surface. 38 years. 38 years of lies. And now this. The drive home from the police station was silent. Carol sat in the passenger seat, staring out at the passing streetlights like she was seeing them for the first time. The kids followed in separate cars, a fractured convoy trailing behind them. He gripped the wheel too tight, his mind replaying her confession on a loop. All those years. All those lies. And the worst part? He still loved her. The house loomed before them, its windows dark. Neither of them moved to get out. I should have told you, Carol said at last. The words hung between them, heavy with decades of regret. Yeah, he said hoarsely. You should have. A moth fluttered against the windshield, drawn to the interior light. Do you want me to leave? She asked. He turned to study her face, the woman who'd borne his children, who'd laughed at his stupid jokes, who'd survived hell right beside him without him ever knowing. No, he said quietly. But I don't know how to do this. Carol nodded, tears glistening in the dim light. Neither do I. They sat there in the quiet, two shattered people in a car that smelled like old coffee and heartbreak. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A normal sound. A human sound. Carol reached across the console, her fingers brushing his. He didn't pull away. The newspaper called it the Lake House Horrors. Front page for a week. National news by day 10. True crime podcasts picked it up within a month. They didn't leave the house much. The kids came over every Sunday, quieter now, more careful with each other. Mark started therapy. Sarah got engaged to her longtime girlfriend, the wedding date pushed up because life's too damn short. Carol slept in the guest room. They ate breakfast together most mornings, the silence between them less heavy with each passing week. On the first anniversary of the discovery, they returned to Miller's Pond. The water sparkled under the afternoon sun, just like it always had. Carol skipped a stone, 1, 2, 3 jumps, before turning to him with the ghost of a smile. Remember when you taught the boys to do this? He nodded, throat tight. She reached for his hand. We were good parents. Not perfect. Not unbroken. But good. And maybe, he thought as their fingers intertwined, that was enough.